Hey everyone, it's Michael Zapersky, and today I have with me Dan Cuprill. Dan, welcome.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Great to be on.
Yes, so Dan, you're in the financial service industry. You run your own financial and kind of personal finance firm,
Mhm.
but you also have another business that helps financial advisors to grow their businesses. There's a lot that we're going to cover here, and I'm excited to dive right in. But you go beyond that. I mean, you've written books on this topic. You've given keynote speeches. You've been featured in the Wall Street Journal, Investors Business Daily, USA Today, a whole bunch of other publications. So let's just kind of start off at the beginning, or at least early on
Sure.
in your career. How did you first get into the world of personal finance?
When I came out of college, and this would have been the mid 80s, the economy really wasn't all that great. And I only had one job offer, and it was to work for an insurance company. Now, it wasn't to sell insurance, it was to underwrite it, to analyze risk. And I didn't particularly want that job, but it was the only one I had. It was in a city I wanted to live in. So I figured, what the heck, we'll try, we'll see how it goes. And the next thing I knew, 10 years had gone by. The
Mm,
hairline was going away, and I realized that I had to do something because deep down I never wanted to work for anybody. I wanted to be self-employed. So one of the things as my job with this particular company progressed is I started, because of a product line we had, I started working with financial advisors, independent financial advisors, more and more. And frankly, I started to see what they did and what they knew, and became very confident that I could do the same thing.
mm,
So one advantage of having worked for a company for 10 years where they're paying you a salary every month is, if you're diligent, you can save a lot of money in 10 years. And so that if you do decide you're going to become self-employed, you can do it and doesn't necessarily have to wreck you financially. Now, don't get me wrong, it was a stretch, but at least I wouldn't have to worry about where the next meal was coming from, or, jump into massive debt in order to do it. So I had been mentored by a number of people about patience, and I'd read somewhere that the businesses who succeed are planned for 2 years in advance. So I planned mine 1 year in advance, and that paid off dramatically. But so when I decided to become a financial advisor, I didn't have any clients, and I was not the type of person, still am not, that would try to sell to a stranger or a neighbor or even a member of my family. I didn't want to do it. So I needed to find a marketing system that I was comfortable doing. And back then, in the at this point now, we're in the early '90s. The idea of doing retirement planning workshops at universities was new. It was a new concept. People would pay money to come. You rent the classroom, and you teach the course. And then after that, people sign up for consultations. And that was perfect for me because I
right.
enjoy public speaking. I enjoy teaching. And that is ultimately how I got my client base. I had to find a marketing system that I would be passionate enough to do. If it was going to be
So Dan,
something.
let's yeah, before we dive into the details of the marketing system,
Sure.
because I know that'll be of interest to a lot of people. What I found, what's really interesting to me is you had a job essentially where you're analyzing risk,
Yeah.
right? And yet you decide to get involved in business, which is one of the riskiest things that from the outside world, right? It
From
appears
the
to be one of
outside
the
world. Yeah.
riskiest, right? And I think you and I both know that actually it's a lot less risky, right, than just being employed because you control your own destiny. But what was going on in your mind as you're analyzing risk and as you're thinking about venturing out to start your own consulting business? Back in that time,
Right.
what were you thinking from a risk perspective, from a business building perspective? Just take us a little bit deeper into the mindset that you had at that time.
It's interesting. I never really thought about failure. I mean, my attitude was, if it didn't work, I could always go get a job.
Mm,
So it wasn't something where I thought, this is a crazy idea, and who's gonna possibly hire me. I, I I had enough confidence in what I knew. So to me, like you just implied, it wasn't really as risky as one might think, provided I could be patient enough, because I knew it would take a number of years to replace the level of earnings that I had previously reached. That
mm,
I knew. So where I did the risk analysis is, I looked at the amount I had saved, and I figured out what would be, one thing I did learn, because I had gone in those 10 years, I had been a journalism major as an undergrad. And so during those 10 years, I actually did go to a business school at night. And one of the things I learned from there was, whatever you think you're going to do in that first year, cut it in half, because that's probably reality. And so that's what I did. So it wasn't all that of a surprise when the results were what they were. I think first year revenues were like maybe $60,000. Um, and almost all that went towards expense. So it wasn't something that was much of a shock, but I had really measured out how long my savings would last before I could do that. And that kind of gave me the confidence. But I also said to my wife many times, because I needed her to be fully on board. I
Mm.
said, if you're not, I'll get a job. But this is something that I don't want to be one of these people looking back when well, now that I'm 57, I don't want to be one of these people looking back at 57 and wonder what if I had done that. So that was the motivator. But truthfully, at that point, I was in my early 30s. I wasn't really all that concerned about if it didn't work. If it didn't work, I'd figure it out, which was probably quite selfish of me, given the fact that A, not only was I married, but B, we had a small child. And so, but I was like, this is what it's going to take to do it. And I think in many cases, having blinders like that probably was the key, because I think if I internalized too much of the downside, it might have scared the heck out of me and I never would have gone forward.
Was your wife fully on board? I mean, when you decide to leave the kind of that, that comfy job and
She
the
said she
stable
was.
income?
She
Yeah.
said she was.
Okay. Yeah.
Deep down, I think she definitely wished that I had kept that, the comfy job. It was a very corporate culture, and we were very intertwined in that.
Mhm.
And really for at least 5 years, what we had was never a part of that. Now, looking back today, oh yeah, she'll tell you it was the best thing we ever did. But no, having a small child, her needing to go back to work, all that stuff. No. In fact, we joked that if her mother had still been alive, she'd have talked her, into talking me out of doing it.
Nice.
So it helps having on board, because otherwise you're going to have those dark moments, and you have to be able to confide with somebody who will support you.
Yeah, I think this is a topic that is actually not discussed enough.
Hmm.
When you have a spouse that is not in the entrepreneurial world, doesn't
Yeah.
understand business, and it's so different, right? And so often I see, and I've experienced myself, my wife is by no means, she's like the furthest stretch from an entrepreneurial mindset. She's from Japan, very conservative, just the way that she's always been involved in the workforce,
Yeah.
very kind of established organizations. And it took her a long time to really understand what entrepreneurship was and how I think about things differently. And so, one, just knowing that your spouse, right, or significant other, even though they may not understand, doesn't mean that their approach is wrong or that yours is right or so forth. But just having those conversations so that you do have that support. Because I agree, right? If you don't have the support of the people around you, or especially that significant other, if they're in the picture, that it's really hard, right? Like, because your mind is then focused on things that are not your business, which means you can't grow your business. And then, right. So any experiences like that over the years that you could?
Yeah, no, listen, it'll break up a marriage if you're not careful. It'll break up a relationship if you're not careful, because you, as a business owner, you're going to work crazy hours, and you're going to have to be willing to miss things. Um, One of the things that used to frustrate me a lot was meeting other business owners who weren't willing to miss things in their life and yet still wanted the results that I was getting, what other people were getting. So this thought of missing one of their kids 40 games in a season just was too much. They couldn't possibly do that. And that's fine. That's fine. But don't get frustrated when you don't get the result you want. Now, having said that, then your significant other has to be on board with that they're going to have to pick up a little bit more of the slack. Now, I would argue, and I don't think there's any doubt about it, that, and it's probably because we had our son right when I became self-employed, but I was able to spend far more quality time with him in my entrepreneurial capacity than I ever would have in corporate America. No doubt about it in my mind. Not to mention having the more of the financial resources to do real quality stuff with them. But there were moments, where I'm working very long hours, and there has to be the understanding with it. So, yeah, look, it can definitely be a reason why relationships break up. Now, I would argue that, you know, if that is a reason things break up, there's probably other issues, and this just exacerbated them a little bit more. But but it is an issue, and you have to think it through. And like I said she was on board, um, and she was very supportive. But I know that she had her moments of concern. which I
Right.
think is just natural. She should.
Yeah. And this is definitely not the relationship show, but I think
No,
this
but
is
it's a
really
real
important.
thing that any
Yeah.
self-employed person needs to weigh out. I mean, I don't know what our divorce rate is compared to others, but I'll bet it's pretty darn high. I
Yeah.
mean, most people I know who are self-employed and have their own businesses, 2 or 3 marriages is not unusual. So,
I
um,
I think, yeah, communication is very important in
yeah,
this, and just, yeah, having, understanding the other person, and not shying away from it, because otherwise you'll end up being so preoccupied with thoughts of how to keep things, moving in the household, that you can't focus on your business, and those two things need to go together. I always say that your business should be structured to support the lifestyle that you want, not the other way around. And then, especially in the early
absolutely.
years, right, the early years of running a business, it can feel like the other way around, because you do have to work harder, you have to quote unquote hustle, right, those
Yeah.
longer nights, as you talked about, to get to the place where you are today, where you have more financial freedom, where you have more time freedom, right, more ability to make choices, and options, and so forth. So what was the point, Dan, where things kind of like clicked in your business, and both you and your wife, and likely was you saw it even sooner, but where you think that she really understood it, and you really felt like, hey, I've made it, I've proven that I can actually make this long term, and I've reached that first kind of summit of success.
You know, it was such a daily, annual, slow progression that I don't think there was ever a moment where it suddenly occurred to me.
Mm,
But when I got to where we had enough recurring revenue, I mean, one of the things I always structured my business on was not to do one-off business. But and you can do this in financial services. You can't necessarily do it in other lines of work, but for the most part, you get 2 ways you can get compensated. People can pay you a large amount up front, and that's it, or they can pay you a very little, well, by comparison, a smaller percentage, but you get it in perpetuity for as long as you maintain the relationship.
mm.
And so I had chosen to do the latter.
Why did you choose that path? And I
I
mean, to some
saw the
people.
long-term benefits of doing it that way. It was harder, trust me. I mean,
uh,
when you're just building something and you could make, say, 40,000 and you choose to make 4, but you're looking at 4 over a number of years, it can take a while. But so that does take a risk. But I was thinking more long-term.
mm,
And so to me, it was like, no, this is a smart thing. And to get that level of recurring revenue would ultimately, well, it would do 2 things. Number one, it would add value to my firm so that if I ever did want to sell it, it'd be worth a lot more. But then secondly, it would at some point give me the lifestyle, the ability to not work for a period of time, except for maybe take care of existing clients and still get paid. And
yeah,
so there were moments when I would take, say, a long vacation and there was no decline at all in the profit to the business because of the way we were doing things. And then when I started to see that we could save dramatically more than we were able to do so, that was where over time I started to realize, okay, we've gotten there. But it is it's like watching a child grow. You don't see it every day. And then you suddenly look back and you see those old photos, which were just taken like 2 years ago. And you're like, oh my goodness. And then you start almost like, how did I miss this? Well, you didn't miss it. You were there in real time. It's just that it's a slow incremental thing. And I think that's important to understand because it's not going to be like winning the lottery. You're not just suddenly one day a failure and then suddenly you're a success. I mean, Hollywood loves to tell those kinds of movies, but it's a progression, that takes some time. And even when you get, say, monetary success, there's still a lot of areas in the business and in your life you got to work on. So I've never for one moment sat back and thought, okay, I made it. No, I don't think that way. I'm just trying to, I have this passion for what I do. And I think, well, there's no doubt that helps. That helps with the success part. But it's never going to be that particular moment. So I'd love to say, yeah, I remember it was on a Thursday and I was watching this and then the light went off in my head. No, it was just probably at some point where I was like, I haven't really done much in the last month and the revenues are still going in well and the clients seem to be happy. That's when I start to see the payoff. Now I will tell you, years wise, it was probably 10 years in before I even got to that moment. So I would have been in my early 40s when that occurred.
Sharon, now reminds me of I read a book by George Leonard called Mastery, and he breaks down the whole idea of what mastery is all about, and he has a big martial arts background, and it really resonated with me as I read that book that that all of us in our lives, as we work towards true mastery in an area, that there will be these times where we feel like we've plateaued, where we're not actually making progress. And as I read that book, it reminded me of when I was learning Japanese. And there would be times where I would feel, okay, I'm studying a lot and I'm trying. I don't necessarily feel like I've gotten any better. And that would be for a period of time. Then all of a sudden something would click and I go like, oh, whoa, I've gone up this whole other level. But oftentimes, right, what this book also kind of talks to, and I saw the parallels in business as well, where you might set out towards a destination, you have a clear goal in mind, you're working towards it, and then you don't necessarily feel like you're making the progress that you want. You're just kind of plateaued. What a lot of people then do is they give up, or they jump ship, or they change direction completely, going like, oh, this must not work, and then they abandon ship, only to find out, or later on, or only to see others that just stayed the course, and then all of a sudden made that exponential gain. But you can't see that gain if you give up during that process.
Well, let me share with you something I told somebody a long time ago, and and I think it really speaks to what you just said. Earlier, I had mentioned that I had seen what other financial advisors were doing, and I thought, well, if they could do it, I can do it. Well, to be candid, I was amazed how little so many of them knew. And it was almost to the point where I was trying my hardest not to be arrogant, but that really gave me a great deal of self-confidence, right? However, I still had to answer this one question in my mind, which was, how are these advisors who, quite frankly, I didn't think were all that sharp, how are they being so successful? And somebody said something to me that hit it one day. They said, well, they don't really think about their failures that much. See, too often, if you're blessed with a reasonable IQ and something doesn't go our way, we have a tendency to analyze it, overanalyze it, and it almost holds us back. These advisors that I was meeting, and I'm not picking obviously anyone specifically, but it was water off a duck's back. If something didn't go, they just plodded on to the next one. And that's why I ultimately concluded that, at least in this industry, in many ways, IQ is a little overrated. Didn't say it wasn't important, all right? But in terms of succeeding as a business owner, and this is not just for financial advisors.
Sure.
I think succeeding as a business owner, IQ, just like being overly educated, is overrated.
I agree 100%. And I've had the same thought where you look at somebody and you see they're extremely successful. They don't necessarily seem like they have the same level of experience or educational
vocabulary,
all that kind of stuff. But they're successful. How can it be? And for me, the overall big kind of the high level viewpoint is that they don't let a lack of information hold them back from taking action. They learn through action. So the way that they get information, the way that they get data is by taking action. Right. Whereas the typical business owner or entrepreneur who, the person that wants to create a business, they feel like they need to have all of the information before taking action, which means they never take action because they never have all the information. And so that's one thing that, I think a big reason why with our clients, we talk about this idea of imperfect action so often, right? When we're working with coaching clients, there's a lot of things that they're going to be doing that they haven't done before. And so often the question is, well, okay, what should I do? Or I've never done this, or I'm not comfortable. You just start, right? Start the process, follow the system, and you're going to start to see that you make progress. So let's go back, Dan, though, to your marketing, right? So you made this shift. You said, okay, I'm going to become a financial advisor, but I don't like to sell, not in the typical way. I don't like to, market directly to people that I don't know. And I think that actually will resonate with a lot of people. A lot of, experts, a lot of consultants, coaches, advisors don't like the idea of being salesy or persuasive or, negotiating and all that kind of stuff. But they do like to provide value. They do like to teach, to make an impact, to help people, which is what I'm hearing you saying. So take us back to that moment. You started doing in-person workshops. Why did they work so well?
Well, at that point, especially, they were feeling a real void because people approaching retirement or just wealth accumulation just didn't know where to go. Now, again, remember, this is early 90s. So while the internet's there, it's still new.
Hmm.
And so people are eagerly looking for help, but they don't want to be in front of a pushy salesperson.
Right.
So the fact that they could be educated and then decide on their own if they wanted to extend the relationship, that was appealing to them. And for the advisor, the advantage to that was they were with you for 3 evenings. They got to see your expertise. They got to know you as a person. If there's not going to be a connection made, then there's never going to be made a connection.
Mm.
So that worked very well, and it still does. It doesn't work as well because there's more competition for it. There's more advisors giving those types of workshops, and there's many more opportunities
How are you
online.
marketing the workshop? How are you getting people, bums in the seats?
Yeah, so there's two ways. First, let me tell you the traditional way, and then I'll tell you what I think is the best way. The traditional way is you send out massive amounts of direct mail,
Mhm.
and you either you bribe these people to come by giving them like steak dinners, or you don't bribe them. You actually make it harder for them to attend by charging them a tuition.
Mhm.
And that's the way that when we go that route, that's how we do it. We actually want to create a barrier for people to come to the workshop. So that's one way to do it. But the best way to do it is you don't just direct mail to the masses. You start by building your own list. You start by building your own list by having an information product, a tangible information product that people order. You market the product, the informational product. And then those people, through continuous nurture, are ultimately invited to one of your live events. And if you do that, you're going to find, well, you might get a smaller number of people because your list might be 1,000 versus 10,000. Your response rate is going to be a heck of a lot higher. And the interest level is going to be a lot higher. Why? Because they're interested in what you do. They ordered the kit. So
Right.
with few exceptions, there's a very high interest level. And if you have multiple events, you're much more likely to connect with them on a time that works for them. Now, this also does work well with webinars as well.
Mm.
The reason I've gotten a little bit concerned about webinars now that, we're still in the middle of the whole COVID period. I mean, now we're doing them out of necessity. One of my fears, though, is that when that's behind us, that people will aggressively look to make that the new normal. And that's fine. But I got to tell you, we're still humans. We're still social beings. We're still into this interactive type things. And I would encourage all business owners, when you can get back to doing things the way you used to do them, you should, or you should at least try to do it. Because I'm going to tell you, there's going to be a sector of the market. And right now, that's probably going to be that older, more affluent sector of the market that's going to want that. They're going to want that. When advisors tell me, oh, this is what I've been waiting for, now we're going to be all virtual all the time. In some cities where you have massive traffic and all that, perhaps Los Angeles, for example, Washington, D.C. But the rest of North America, see how sensitive I am to your Canadian roots? I was just about to say America, and I said North
Well,
America.
we have a global audience. You're going to
I
reach
know.
far beyond the U.S. borders
I
here.
know. I was just teasing you, though. There's
Yeah.
a tendency for Americans to just go, it's America. Anyway, I wanted credit for that. I'm teasing.
All good. So, I mean, on the topic of marketing, so you essentially start to build your financial kind of advisor practice business through that channel.
Right.
What what else worked, or how else did you go about kind of building your clientele initially? Was there anything else that rivaled that in terms of effectiveness?
No, and believe me, I tried everything. Had a radio show, massive amounts of direct mail, where rather than having them do a workshop, call us. It wasn't until I understood the formula of direct mail, and a lot of that was by reading a lot of Dan Kennedy books,
Sure.
that I got a real appreciation for this idea that no, you got to get people to raise their hand above the masses to say, I'm interested in this, and then go from there. Stop assuming just because they live in a certain zip code that they're the right fit for you.
Right.
So I found the more challenging I made it, frankly, for them to work with me, whether it be you had to pay to come to a workshop or you had to pay first to do a plan or whatever, the ideal prospect for me was far more responsive to that. But no, truthfully, having an informational product and educating has always worked far better than anything else that I've done. And in working with other advisors who are doing other things, when we've encouraged them to expand it. So example, the guy's got the radio show. Rather than just using the call to action to give his office a call, why don't you have the call to action be to get a free copy of your book? Those people, their success rate went up dramatically, and it made total sense that they would do that.
So for you in your business, give us an example of like what was that information product that you used to initially bring people into your world,
Sure.
And then so it sounds like you give them access to that, then you gave them a bunch of emails and correspondence, and then you would invite them to an in-person workshop.
Sure. Well, specific to the United States, most people, when they work for a corporation, have a retirement plan. It's called a 401k plan. And this is money that they have saved all the years with the employer contributions. It's never been taxed. So when they retire, they may think they have $1 million, but they really have 700,000. Why? Because 300,000 is going to be owed in tax.
Right.
Well, there are strategies that you can employ in order to minimize that. So if you understand here, it was important that we had a message that our target market would respond to. Mm-hmm. And our target market hates taxes. And when you tell them that their entire retirement savings is subject to tax, and you lay out a very compelling argument as to why taxes may have to go up in the future, to have a book or a kit that will give them that will tell them how to have a tax-free retirement, that is compelling. Mm. And so that kit has a book, it has an audio CD, it's got a few reports in it. It's not even
the kit was
so
free.
much.
They would get the kit for free, or they have
we
to pay
do give them the kit for free. Yep.
Okay.
And I wouldn't be opposed to charging postage for it. Maybe
right.
just to kind of separate a few more people out of the group. Wouldn't be opposed to trying that at all. But we had them order the kit. And then once they order the kit, as soon as they order the kit, immediately, because the automation, they get both a text and a voicemail from me. So it doesn't matter if they order it at 2 a.m. They're going to get an immediate response saying, hey, it's coming. And then what happens is there's a long-term nurture process of emails, direct mail, invitations to webinars and seminars, as well as delivery of our podcast, because we have one specifically for financial services. So this whole engagement just goes, and it's until they either buy, die, or they opt out.
Right.
Got it. That works.
And I mean, the results of that, what should somebody expect in terms of if they're going to, they have to obviously fulfill sending this out. What kind of results have you seen in terms of we spend X amount of dollars, we see Y result from it?
Yeah. I think the best results that you could go across all lines of work would be looking at response rates and cost of doing this. So for example, to create a kit like I just described, forget if we ignore postage for a second, because that's going to vary. You can easily create that for under $10 US. A book can be printed for $2 nowadays. The box is 90 cents. So the cost of doing these things is very low. Even promoting it on social media, we've got it down now where it's costing us less than $3 per request. So this is a very low cost, and a typical month, 50 to 60 will go out. Again, I think we've got the message in the market right? The economics for us, we in a normal mass mailing type, promoting a seminar, we'll be lucky if we send out 10,000 pieces. We'll be lucky to get between 20 and 30 people to come to the workshop. That's a 0.2 or 0.3 response rate. With the kit, 10% response rate. So from there, it's just a matter then of how good are you in terms of your presentation and you do your seminars, et cetera. Now, it takes a while to build that list. I was getting to the economics of the kit.
Yeah.
And I'll try to pick up where we're at. So the economics of the kit work really good, but the response rate is so much higher when you're doing it that way. And then really it just depends on how well you're able to give a worthwhile presentation, which should generate the results. Now, I will tell you in our case, half the people who come to our workshops typically become clients. That's actually down by design. We used to have a much higher client rate, but we found that a lot of those people, we were really bending over backwards to make anybody a client, and that was a mistake. So one of the things that we've done is at the end of every seminar now, we always tell them why they should not come in for a meeting. And we describe scenarios where we're not a good fit for. And that is actually driven response rate. But the people who then come in, their likelihood of becoming clients is incredibly high.
Yeah.
So kind of worked a couple different ways. But in the past, we were always driven by, well, did we make a sale? Now, we don't think of those terms anymore. Now what I say is, of the people we offered our services to, how many of those accepted? And that should be close to 100% if we connect with the people the right way.
Yeah, I think one big theme that's coming out today, Dan, as you're sharing some of your story and best practices, is this idea of raising the bar, right? And raising the bar to some means that it's harder for people to jump over that bar. But those that do are going to be infinitely and significantly better for your business, more profitable. You're going to have a better relationship with them. They're going to really be the right types of people. And so even with marketing, right, we talk about this idea of polarization. Some people would look at and say, well, why would you do that if you're going to have a lower, overall number of people coming or whatever it might be, but on the front end, right? But by doing it that way, you're actually able to see a significantly better result on the back end.
You are. And the other thing too is, when you look at who your ideal prospect is, I think one of the qualifications has to be that this person is the kind of human being you really want to work with.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you really want to have that kind of client that when they call, you just, you let out this big sigh, and you get that high level of anxiety? It's just not worth it. Now, I understand when you're getting started, you have a little bit of a scarcity mentality. It's normal. Do your best to get over it, because I'll tell you this, as somebody who now in life is, where I am now in life, I would be considered target market for my business. I wasn't that way when I was younger, but I am now. Okay. I appreciate working with somebody who is a little bit more challenging to get them to offer me. I mean, when I travel, I could find the most beautiful looking hotel in the world. If it's priced too low, I know there's got to be something wrong. I won't even go for it, right? So understand what your target market wants. And very often, depending on who they are, they're going to appreciate the person who's a little bit more selective. I mean, I've seen to where advisors, they actually have an application that you have to apply to have that first meeting. That's something. Now, they know very well that they're going to drive the numbers down, but they are established enough to where that doesn't worry them. I think that you can come across that way as long as you have the brains to back it up and the experience to back it up. I think you can be like that from the beginning. You can say, no, this is who I work with, and it's a risk. I mean, I'll admit it does, but it takes the same level of courage as when you said you become self-employed in the first place. In fact, it probably takes less. So use that courage.
Yeah, I think the other thing it does too is it establishes you as, as a peer-to-peer relationship or really as that trusted advisor. If you're just kind of, oozing excitement to try and win someone's business, without any rigor, any structure, and just saying yes to, to any opportunity that comes your way, buyers can sense that. It's like, well, this person's really needy. They're hurting for business. They're going to do anything to try and win my business. And that's typically the first thing that's going to then drive that person away rather than towards you.
Well, you said the magic word there, needy. Neediness will kill any business owner.
Yeah.
Look, I always tell people, even if you really are needy, try not to show it.
Yeah. But then let's now shift. I mean, we talked about your financial advisor business and how you've kind of built that up over the years and that your transition from corporate into that business. But your other business is actually helping financial advisors to grow their business. And so you coach them, you consult with them, you advise them on how to do that. You and I were talking beforehand that it's a great example of how anyone that has expertise in a specific area, right, can likely help others in that area to see greater success, as long as they have actually achieved that success themselves, right? Because otherwise they shouldn't be teaching and talking if they haven't actually done it, right? So you did it, you established your business, and then you said, okay, I can now help others. Where did that come from? When did you actually decide to make that shift, or to create that new business? And just kind of walk us through what that looks like.
One thing I guess you can say about me is that I'm not hesitant to share. And so as I was having success as a financial advisor, a lot of advisors sought me out for input. How are you doing this? How are you doing that? Our community as advisors is pretty good in that regard. We share ideas a lot. We're not overly worried that we're giving away trade secrets or anything like that.
Right.
After enough of them came through, and I'm talking, we used to even have a name for it. My initials are DC, so it was actually, we used to call it Camp DC because, we were getting quite a few people reaching out because they'd heard somebody else had spent a day at my office. So probably after about the 15th person, I just said, all right, look, there's a business here. I went to 13 other advisors that I knew really well, and I explained to them what I was looking to put together. And I said, would you come in as kind of like the pilot, the beta? I'm going to charge you, but it won't be nearly as much as what people will eventually pay. I'm not making up as I go, but I'll be fixing things as I go. Would you be open to that? And they were like, yeah, let's do that.
Right.
There's a business there for just about anybody if you've had some level of success, and you know what, it really doesn't even have to be so much in your business. I mean, you could have a hobby, but there's an information marketing / mentoring / coaching business there for just about whatever it is that you do. Because I assure you, there's going to be people out there who are going to want what you have. And if you've been able to do it as a self-employed person, if you understand how to build that list of people, you're going to find that to be a very, not only lucrative business, but a lot of fun. Right now, Advisor Architect, which is that information marketing business, easily uses up about 80% of my time. Now, the planning firm, I saw that coming. So I brought in a partner a few years ago, and she runs the day-to-day of the planning firm. So I'm able to work on that business rather than in it, which I think is what we all strive to do. But to answer your question, it was largely because a lot of people had sought me out initially, and then I just floated the idea. And then from there, I was amazed how easy it was from the technology that's out there to do this. Now, initially, I didn't know about the technology, and I was doing everything the hard way until someone pulled me aside and said, there's this, that, and the other thing. And I was like, oh. But there's an information marketing business out there for everyone. But I think what helps is, yes, if you have the credibility of having done it yourself successfully, that helps. I will tell you this, though. There's a lot of people
Sure.
Who train others, and it's the classic, if they can't do, they teach. There is a lot of that. Now, here's what I would tell you. I wouldn't let your lack of experience as a practitioner to hold you back in training other practitioners, provided you take the time to learn it. Sometimes the best skill that I have is not even so much that I'm an advisor. It's just my power of observation. I almost play the role of a psychiatrist when an advisor will describe something that they've been doing really well, and then they stop doing it. And we discuss that. Now, that is not specific to my industry. Anybody could say that from any industry. So if you are a good listener, if you are a good teacher, a lot of the things that I teach other advisors to do, quite frankly, they had heard it before. Right. It wasn't like I was the first one. What was different maybe was that my process has a strong implementation angle to it. So we actually get it done.
So Dan, before we wrap up here, I want to ask you about wealth building, right? You've worked with a lot of clients in that regard, right? Help them to essentially achieve more financial freedom, more wealth.
Right.
If you had to just hit on one area, one principle, one strategy, and it's fine if it's US specific, people can kind of extrapolate from it, but what would you say when you look at your most successful clients and just the best opportunities that are out there? What should a business owner, what should a consultant there might be a solo consultant, they might be a small firm owner listening to this right now that wants to build long-term wealth. If you could just offer, one thing for them to think about or to look into, what should that be?
Yeah. This may sound a little odd, but investing in your own business, in my opinion, not a great idea. I hear this line all the time. I'm going to, I had a profit and I'm going to invest it back in the business. Well, look, if you're publicly traded, if your business is Microsoft, I understand that. You're buying more of their stock. What you need to do is you need to dedicate a percentage of revenue, not profit, revenue, top line, every year towards your own personal net worth, which means whatever your sales were, they should be 90% of that. 10% of that has to come out and has to go towards building your own net worth independently of your business.
Mhm.
Now, look, if you build your business to the point of success where someone pays you millions and millions of dollars for it, great. But you're going to be just fine if you only have 90% rather than 100%. You'll get by. If you take that attitude, which, Mike Michalowicz is in his book calls it profit first. If you take that attitude and you give up a percentage, look, all right, 10's too high, go 5. You can't tell me anybody can't give up 5% of anything and really miss it. You just can't. So if you're willing to do that and get away from this myth of, well, my business someday, it'll go public. It might, but the odds are it won't. It's kind of like when kids are playing sports. I tell the parents, if you can accept the reality that they're not going to play professionally, you'll actually enjoy watching them play. But as long as you hold on to that, it's going to get in the way. And the odds are so overwhelming that they won't. So do the same thing with your own revenue.
And I think so. One distinction I want to make on that, because I completely agree. And I mean, I've been doing this I've had this mindset from a young age. My father kind of instilled this idea of investing and the importance, and thinking about the future, thinking long term. And so I've benefited from that, and I completely agree. The importance of taking a percentage of what you're making and then building your net worth or investing it, right? Because that's when your money goes to work for you, right? Rather than you having to work for your money, which is what you do in your business. However, you mentioned one thing which I just want to kind of put a distinction on, because I think some people might kind of misconstrue it, which is it's important to invest into your business, right? So whether that is, for example, like what we see a lot is people when it comes to marketing, right? They're hesitant to market. So what you said is you do a lot of marketing, right? You
right,
invest.
But we have a specific budget for it, and maybe that's the
Correct.
key. All right.
Yeah, so right. So it's not just going, oh yeah, I'm making more money, I'm going to go in now, get the fancy chairs for my office, or I'm going to redo the sign outside.
Exactly.
It's not just throwing money into the business, right? I completely agree with you that.
Or go hire another person that you don't really even need.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing that I think you're saying as well is it's not about just keeping money in the business with the hope, and trying to scale and grow it rapidly with the hope that one day you might make money from it on an exit or a sale. It's about maximizing the profit in the business, continue to reinvest in a smart way to grow it, but pulling out money so that you can build your wealth and then have your money work for you.
Yeah, exactly. And remember that there needs to be a balance. Now, for what it's worth, I recommend that your marketing budget equal what you're keeping for yourself. So if you're pulling out 10% for yourself, you got to put 10% towards the business, towards growing it. All right. But yeah, I don't mean it from that standpoint, but too often money sits in the bank account and it gets wasted. It gets wasted on things that they don't need. But just remember this, the goal, I know this will sound incredibly capitalistic, guilty. The goal of a business owner is to enrich the business owner. Now, I maintain if you can do that, you can do a lot of great things for society. So I don't view it as being a bad thing at all. But that when you lose sight of that, you start making decisions that can really endanger the business. So keep that part in mind. Go back to read, if you don't read the E-Myth every year by Michael Gerber, you should.
Well, Dan, thank you so much for coming on here, and sharing a bit of your story and some of the best practices and lessons that you've learned. Where would you suggest that people can go? I know you have probably two different sites at least, but where would be the best place for people to go just to learn more about you, your journey, what you're up to?
Best place to go would be dancuprill.com. If you go there, you can subscribe to my almost daily email where I'm sending out business tips. And you would also get a free copy of my newsletter, The Profitable Advisor. So go there. That's a great place to start. That's Dan Cuprill, CUPRILL.com.
Fantastic. Dan, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, Michael.